Hello and welcome to Take Back Time. My name is Penny Zenker and I'm your host. And I'm here to help you to work smarter because it's too much work to work harder. And so we want to have the tips and tricks to make that happen. And today we're going to talk about communication as a super important part of being more productive, because if we can't communicate effectively, then the productivity just goes down, down, down. So I'm super excited to have Scott Tillema with us. He is a top communication keynote speaker. He's an FBI trained hostage negotiator and senior associate with the Negotiations Collective. He's a nationally recognized leader in the field of crisis and hostage negotiation, training thousands of law enforcement negotiators across the country. Scott has developed a model for hostage negotiation, which is now being adapted by those in the private sector for the use in sales communication and leadership, because those techniques, I'm sure, are completely relatable and they work, right? We know that they work. So I'm excited to hear how these steps translate into the corporate world. So Scott, welcome to the show.
Penny, how are you? Nice to be back with you.
I know. I'm excited to get into the juice of your topic here. But first, how did you end up, doing this type of work? Is that something you've always wanted to do since you were a kid, or what?
Yeah, this is pretty unusual. You don't just sign up to be a hostage or crisis negotiator.
Right.
So I went to school for behavioral science and psychology. So I've always been interested in what people do, why they do it, what they think. And as I became a little bit more sophisticated in that study, almost interested in behavioral analysis and behavioral engineering. How do we get people to do what we want them to do?
Right.
And I started a career in law enforcement, and I was thinking, how can I still take my interests and my education and apply it within this field? Because law enforcement is so broad, there's so many different areas you can specialize in. And I kept having this draw to hostage negotiation. First of all, it sounded really cool. There's some cool movies made about it, but at its core, you're working to influence people to get them to do what you want them to do, which is a right thing, a good thing, a very safe thing, in very stressful circumstances. So I had an opportunity to, through my agency in the Chicago area, apply to be on a regional SWAT team as a hostage negotiator. And with about 5 years of experience in law enforcement, I was selected to be on the team, which is probably a little bit early, but I was lucky to be selected. And I was part of this regional team for about 8 years. And it was a terrific experience to help out some people really in very critical moments in their life, and try to bring some safety and calm to some pretty chaotic scenes. So I probably became a little bit hooked on the adrenaline of doing this type of thing. So as I was taken off the team to focus on my leadership role within my agency, I started having opportunities to teach and train about this. And as I got in front of people, I would have that same rush of having adrenaline, being up in front of a big crowd. And I said, hey, this is pretty cool. So it was kind of a natural progression to continue to teach and speak about my work in negotiation. And I learned that these same techniques of influence that we use in crisis and hostage negotiation are really valued and useful by people beyond us in this particular field. So as I started to meet people from sales and marketing and leadership, they're very interested in how do we get people to do what we want them to do. And I've had some opportunities to teach and speak to those in the private sector, kind of beyond my world, and formed a company called the Negotiations Collective, where we do exactly that. We teach and train people in the private sector on how to get what they want.
Right. And really, don't we all want tools and methods to be able to get what we want and to influence other people? I mean, that's the key of leadership, right? It's not, you can't force people to do things. You can't force people to follow you. You want to influence them. And I think that is, an important skill that we all need to have. And I think as kids, right, the kids are really good at helping and having their initial techniques of how do you influence your parents to get what you want. But we have to grow out of those very raw ways of doing it and have more effective technique. So I am interested in, so what are the things that you find that best transfer over? Like, how do you map a situation? Because like you said, there's a, if you were to take a hostage situation, there's like high pressure, there's maybe severe time constraints, right? That you might be working with someone. How does that translate into the corporate world to make some of these methods still work?
Well, I think that corporate negotiators feel the same pressure. Maybe there isn't life on the line, but they know that there's a significant deal to be done, millions or billions of dollars, and their job may be on the line. The jobs of others may be on the line. So I realize that a lot of people in the negotiation space feel that same pressure. They know that they have to perform at a high level. So I find that we're going into these situations, and yes, they're all very different and all very nuanced, and it makes it very specific to the situation. So we have to be adaptable and flexible. But if you go into these difficult conversations and you have a framework to help guide you through it, I think that is the most empowering thing. So I'm not just going in hoping, I got my fingers crossed that maybe the
Right.
negotiator will be really nice and give me something that I want, but instead I've developed a four principle model to say, when we go into this, these are the things that we're focused on, and this is what we're going to be doing throughout the conversation. And by knowing I have a little mental map, I can stay very focused on what needs to happen. And this is what gets us to influence. By building a bond, building a connection through four principles, we then get to influence, which is where we want to be.
So I want to stop you there for a second,
Sure.
just so people who are listening, that they can connect the dots here. So when your framework, right, and I believe this, when we have structures and we have systems in place, it helps us to navigate difficult situations. It gives us something to fall back on. And so you're saying that helps that person who's in that high pressure place of negotiating and bringing that deal forward or bringing that project to the next stage, that it helps them to lower their stress so that they can fall back on these principles. Is that right?
Of course. And the reason that this is important is we have to begin by regulating ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
When I do negotiation coaching, everybody always asks, how can I control the other person? And at the end of the day, I'm not sure that you can control somebody else, and it's not really a negotiation. Then either you're in charge or you just have to realize that you can't control them. But I say, let's instead focus on controlling ourselves. If we can manage ourselves, now we're going to be in a position where we can start to influence the other person, because at least we're in control of that conversation a little bit, or we're guiding that conversation and not being held hostage to the other person who is in charge of themselves and now taking charge of you. So we begin by having mastery of ourselves, our emotions, and instead of being overwhelmed, like having a goal of how do I free the hostages, let's have small goals and say, our goal right now is to build a bond. And let's get through the first principle, and then we move to the next principle. And we're kind of working through this. And now it becomes a little bit more of a manageable process to say, here's what I'm working on right now. Here's what I'm thinking about at this next moment. And then we realize this isn't such a difficult thing. This isn't such a stressful thing. And we start to put that together, and we get the momentum to go where we want to go.
Right. Well, that makes a lot of sense. So you said there was a 4-stage principle. Would you be able to share that with us here?
So I found that under pressure, it's difficult to remember complex thoughts. And I learned that during my first negotiation. I came in, I was trained by the FBI. I've got all this education behind me, and I'm ready to go. And you don't realize how debilitating all that pressure is. So I want to keep it real simple. And it's 4 words. And the 4 words are understanding, timing, delivery, and respect. And my thought is, if we can remember these 4 words, understanding, timing, delivery, and respect, and not only remember that these are the 4 principles we're going to work from, but their relationship to each other. And it's not a linear process. It's not a stairway trying to go up, but I see it as a circle, that these 4 principles form a circle, and we kind of go around and around. And what that circle signifies is the bond that we're trying to create with the other person. Mm-hmm. Because it's found to be, if we're likable, that is a big principle of influence. If we're likable to somebody, And having that connection, especially in really emotionally driven situations, can go a long way and help you get what you want. So
let me interrupt you there for a second,
okay,
because, I try to play the devil's advocate and what people might be thinking who are listening, and even what I might be thinking. So how do you do that when the person on the other side is someone you don't like? Like, we don't always, maybe, and I'm sure in a negotiation, it might be despicable what somebody has done in the situation that they're in. So how do you get past that if you have a bias in a situation?
and we will have biases, and we will be dealing with people we don't like. And especially in my role, we're going to be dealing with people who have done really bad, terrible things. My question to you is, what is your goal?
Mm-hmm.
What is your goal? And your goal is to reach an agreement. And that's the purpose of a negotiation. Why are you having a conversation with this person in the first place? And it's not so we can go out to dinner and share a bottle of wine, and start dating or fall in love, or
Right.
the purpose is we reach an agreement. And I don't need to like you to reach an agreement with you. And this is where ego gets in the way a little bit. So
Mm-hmm.
we say, I want to be right. I want to show that I'm superior to this person. I want to show that I'm the correct one and they're wrong. And this is ego getting in the way. That's not what negotiation is. We're not trying to convince them to believe what I believe. You and I can have very different beliefs, and that's okay, because my goal here is for us to reach an agreement. And maybe it's to come to a certain price so we can sign the contract. Maybe it's for you to deliver something at a certain time. Whatever we're negotiating, the goal has to be very, very clearly in focus for us. Because if I can say, this is my purpose is to, in my role, get this person to put down the gun. My purpose is to get them to sign the agreement for training classes or for a keynote speaking contract. This is my goal. It's not about being right. And I think that a lot of folks get sidetracked to say, I really don't like this person, and I need to somehow prove that I'm correct, that I'm right.
Right.
And that's not what negotiation's about. It's about finding an agreement.
Awesome. Thank you. I've always felt that way. I've always been able to just ask myself that simple question: is what is the goal here, so that I can be very clear and very focused on the goal and not all that other noise that comes up and can distract us. So that's the first thing. I guess that's part of is, so tell us the four. So it's understanding, timing, delivery. Is that what you said? Or did I not?
And respect.
And
yeah,
respect.
You got it. Perfect.
I got to read my own handwriting here.
Yeah. And I think that with the first principle of understanding, the more different the person is from me, the more fun this piece is. Because my first little goal here is to try to understand the situation. I can't solve the problem if I don't know what it is. So the more different they are from me, the more interested I should be. And again, it's not that, hey, I'm voting for this person, you're voting for this person. You believe in these rights, I believe in those rights, and we see it very differently. Cool. I know that I'm confident in who I am and what I believe and where I'm going in life. So hearing something that's contrary to what I believe, or in a different direction from where I'm going, should be interesting to me. And I think the great negotiators really become very curious here. And not only can they ask good questions, but they can do it while suspending judgment. Because we're very good at being judgy, flip on social media, and it's our national pastime just to point fingers and make fun of people and say this person is very different. But the great negotiators actually get people very comfortable in sharing views that might be different from mine, and it's not about me. Understanding means it's not about me telling you, let me share how great I am and tell you about my company and this thing that I'm selling and all that. It's completely about you help me get all the information I can, because your power in negotiation comes from information and options. And if I can't ask you good questions, read body language, understand gestures, facial expressions, all the nonverbals, I'm losing the opportunity to gather information about you, your position, your situation. And the more information, the more options I develop, the more powerful I'm going to be. And that begins with understanding.
I love it. And that's, I would think that that's the hardest first step to come over, is that because of the ego piece, right? It seems like that would be the bigger challenge. So just briefly, how do we, tell us a little bit more about these other three stages.
So we begin with understanding, and they all kind of work together. And the timing piece, this is your strategy to really consider, when are you going to deliver the message? I call you up on the phone. Hey, Penny, I want you to buy this thing. I'm not going to be very influential, because do you know who I am? Do you know the benefits to you? Did I get you at the time that you're able to even have a conversation? So really consider your timing, because a lot of people have a good strategy and we're so eager to just roll this out and we blurt it out. We can be missing huge opportunities for value if we have the wrong timing. And not only might we miss the opportunity to do a deal, but we could put ourselves in a much worse position. So I think that it begins with being a good listener, and not being in a rush to get right to the deal making. But there's also a thing called the anchoring effect, which shows that the first number that's put on the table is often the most powerful, because we kind of get stuck to that or anchored to that number. So
Mm-hmm.
sometime if you come in with a lot of information, and you're in a stronger negotiation position, maybe your timing is, I am going to put a number out there fairly early in the conversation and see if we can anchor my negotiation partner to that number. So the second principle is timing, which is the strategy piece in a negotiation.
Awesome. And so tell us about delivery. So now that we've got the understanding and the strategy of the timing, what's the delivery? Is that's the words and the way that we bring it across?
Yeah, and as a pro speaker, you specialize in this. You know, how many people spend time working on the delivery? It's not what you say, it's how you say it. And we get so stuck on the content. Here's my arguments, here's my pitches, here's my proposals, and we've got the content down. Everybody spends time preparing on that. But how many people spend time thinking about the delivery, the rate, the rhythm, the pressure, the volume, the tone of what they're going to say? And I argue that we make decisions based on emotion all the time. We don't make decisions based on logic and reasoning. For as smart as we think we are, that's not how we make decisions.
Right.
So if we can deliver it in a way that we are creating positive emotion and good positive effect with the person we're working with, now we're starting to get them in a position where, all right, they feel good about us, they like us, they want to do the deal. And it's almost a little bit hypnotic to say, hey, we're really getting them in the zone that we can get in a position where, all right, let's really start discussing this. So if you're preparing, you're probably already preparing your content. I really challenge people, even in really pretty basic conversations, start to consider your delivery of how you are going to present whatever it is you're going to say.
You know, I think a lot of people, typically in a sales environment, right? So they're used to doing some role plays and practicing a little bit. But I think what's missing when you shift into leadership and other types of roles that don't see themselves in sales roles is they don't focus on the delivery. They are focused on the content, and then they get in their head. I always find that even for me, right, as a public speaker, it's perfect in my head, but when it comes out, it's like, oh, you know, that sounds totally different. So we need to practice it out loud, is what I find, in order to really understand how we get to the right tone, like you said, the cadence and all of that, and that we're translating what we intend and what we think is coming out that way. Do you have like a special way that you suggest that people practice the delivery, or something of that nature?
Well, first of all, let's be willing to accept feedback in coaching.
Mm-hmm.
So often we don't like getting feedback, because especially the leaders and the high performers are very confident that I've gotten to this successful place in life, and I'm doing it because I'm good at what I do. But you think of the very top percentage of people, they all have a coach. Michael Jordan, the top basketball player in the world, had a coach working with him to make him better. And it's not
Multiple
that the
coaches, apparently.
Yeah, we got all these people are coaching to say, hey, let's get you better. And for me to not only be willing to accept it, if you're willing to give me that coaching and feedback, but to actually go solicit that and say, Penny, you and I were just working on this deal. Tell me what you heard. Tell me how you felt when I presented this. So we can just get this from our peers and our colleagues. And I think that we're motivated by fear, in that we don't want to bruise our ego. But if we say, my goal is to be the best whatever that I can be, how can I do that? I need to focus on this delivery piece right here. I want to be the best speaker, of course, is very relevant. Tell me about the delivery. How do you feel? How do you hear the cadence, the pausing, the inflections, the pace? And just by getting the feedback of what you're already doing, we can start to make minor adjustments. And then we can go deeper, and sometimes we'll do back-to-back listening where I can't cheat and study your body language, and I'm just focused on the words that you're saying in my presence. We'll turn the chairs around, and now you can do the nonverbals with the verbals. So there's a lot of practicing on the delivery, but the most simple thing is ask the people around you for feedback. Hey, give me some coaching. You hear me on the phone all the time. You hear me talking to clients all the time. What's my delivery like? What is my person effect? How do you think I'm perceived by other people? And that can really open up some blind spots that can give us the ability to make small adjustments to make us even better.
Awesome. I love it. I like that idea of practicing, role playing, not looking at each other and just focusing on one sense, and then focusing on seeing each other. I like that little nuance for sure.
Yeah, we cheat all the time. We look for our information visually. Visually is more powerful than audio, I think, and that if we see it, we can believe it. And I actually do some exercises to show how powerful the nonverbals are in my seminars. And everybody always says, I always just believe what I see. So that's a really important part. So when we take that away, now we really have to focus on being a good listener and being thoughtful in our delivery.
Awesome. So tell us lastly about respect.
Yeah, I think most people say, I got this one. I've been raised right. I'm a successful professional. So I get the yes, sir, no, ma'am, please, thank you. I get how to be polite and respectful. But I argue that respect is about emotion and connecting with people's emotion and making sure that we're not triggering them negatively, and we're moving them with positive emotion to help them get to where we want them to go. And three big components for me, fairness is a really big piece in emotion, that you can trigger people's emotion very quickly if they feel like they're being treated unfairly.
Yes.
So it's important to understand, to try to work from a fair place, understand what fairness looks like to them. A lot of times we run into problems because what I think is fair is not what you think is fair. So that's an important trigger. Autonomy is a big one. Especially right now, we're coming out of COVID where everybody's kind of been locked down. You can't travel, you can't come to work, you have to come to work, you can't get vaccinated, you have to get vaccinated. And we're just kind of at a place where we want our own space. So if we're being told what to do, sometimes people just want to push back reactants to say, I don't know what you want from me, but I feel your pressure. So I'm just going to push back to make sure that my freedom isn't being impinged upon. And then maybe a third piece is empathy and really kind of seeing how it looks like to the other person, because we're almost in a generation now where everybody has an inflated self-importance, where you can go on Facebook right now and see the 28 things that this person had for lunch and then 35 pictures of their dog earlier. And nobody cares about you and your posts on social media, but we all have it in our mind. We're very important. So does the person feel like you care about them, that you are connecting with them, that you have a true sense of appreciation of why they're having the conversation with you in the first place? And I would almost encourage you to say, where's the pain right now? Why are you here? There's a pain you are trying to solve, and how can I solve that for you? What can I offer my company, my group, me personally? What can I offer to help resolve this stressful situation, this painful situation, to make life easier for you? So within respect, there's a couple different triggers that I kind of look for, that I try to press, that I try to avoid, and say we're really being respectful of their emotions, which is where people make decisions. And we just kind of work this circle. And as we're being respectful, now we go right back into the understanding piece. Are we hearing how they feel now? Have things changed since the beginning of this negotiation, which might have been 10 minutes ago? It might have been 10 months ago. And we just kind of keep working around these principles in unison. And as we build this connection, we're going to be in a place where we're going to be a little bit more influential than when we began. And hopefully that gets you to where you want to go in your next negotiation.
Wonderful. I love it. I love it. I'm a huge believer that communication is really one of the most important productivity drivers, because very rarely do we set out to achieve something on our own. It's usually together with other people. So it's the fastest path to trust and productivity in my mind. So, just for curiosity, I ask every guest this. So how do you define productivity and why?
Productivity. Oh man. It's more than just being busy, I guess, because we all think that we're productive because we're very busy, but productive is probably achieving an end result that is good for me and good for others. Because in the negotiation space, I want to make sure that I'm getting what I want. It's important that I win. I'm not running a charity here, but it's also important that you get what you want. So if we can both come out and be in a better place, we're more happy, we're more able to do whatever we each do, that's being productive, because now I'm further ahead, you're further ahead, we're each in a better place. And from a negotiation standpoint, that's some cool productivity. And it's going to lend itself to probably great future opportunities for both of us together, and potentially other spin business from having worked together.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. I love it. Achieving an end result that's good for me and good for others. It's perfect. I just like how everybody has their twist based on, where, what's important to them, how that definition is different. And I've never had the same definition in all the years that I've been asking this. So it's interesting, cool. Right?
Yeah.
So anyway, we're at the end of our time. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you wanted to share today before we conclude?
I think we're off to a good start. I think if your listeners could take a couple minutes and kind of put that together in their mind, identify their next difficult conversations, and we all should be having difficult conversations, and think about how having this mental model could really be advantageous to them, to help them get better results, make that conversation a little bit less stressful, and help them achieve more in their life. And we all have difficult conversations. We should be having these conversations. And I think that it's a success and a great use of their time if they can put this to work in their life. And I love hearing from folks who say, I'm using this in this aspect or that aspect, and in different ways that I could ever imagine. But more often than not, people come back to me and say, this is so important for me and my work, but I'm also using this at home.
At home,
in my
absolutely.
relationship
I
with
was
my
thinking
partner,
this is parenting,
kids.
Right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
With the people I love, because I want to have a deeper connection, a deeper bond with them. And this is how I've been able to do that. So I love hearing that from folks, and I love to connect with your listeners. I'm always active on LinkedIn. I think it's a great social networking site. So for anybody listening, would love to connect and hear their story as well.
Awesome. Well, we'll definitely put all of your links in the show notes so they can connect with you on LinkedIn. They can go to your website. What's your, just so they can hear it audibly, what's your website and how can they reach you there?
Sure. I'm at scotttillema.com. I also, if you want a little bit more about what we talked about today, you can hear more on my TED Talk, which is The Secrets of Hostage Negotiators, which is published on YouTube. And love to connect on LinkedIn if anybody wanted to personally connect. But there's a couple good ways that you can learn about me and my work.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Scott, for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you all for being here, because you know that communication is key. And if you want to be productive, as Scott says, you want to make sure that it's good for you and good for others. That just makes sense to me. And that's how we create progress. That's how we get further. And that I wholeheartedly am behind that definition for productivity. So make sure that you guys are thinking about that in everything that you do, and write down those 4 things on a sticky note so that you can really come back and think about them in more detail and use them throughout your day. Understanding, timing, delivery, and respect. And use them as a circle as you grow through your relationships and your interactions with everybody that you deal with. So thank you for being here. My name is Penny Zenker, and this is Take Back Time. I'll see you in the next episode.